The wind screamed across the high desert like a beast unchained. Snow whipped through the canyons, turning the red earth white. John Mercer pulled his hat low, his horse trembling beneath him. He hadn't seen a storm this fierce since Wyoming. He urged the animal forward, breath fogging the air. He'd been driving cattle toward Tucson for days, but now the world had turned to frost and chaos. As the storm swallowed the horizon, he spotted a dark shape in the snow, small, human, motionless. His gut clenched. He swung down from the saddle and ran toward it. It was a woman, young, her dark braids frozen stiff, her clothes soaked through. Her skin was pale from cold, lips nearly blue. Without thinking, John pulled off his coat and wrapped it around her. "Hey, stay with me," he shouted over the roaring wind. No response, only a weak twitch of her fingers. He lifted her easily. She was light as a bird. His eyes searched the blizzard for shelter, and that's when he saw the half-buried outline of a hunter's cabin near a rocky rise. He fought the storm step by step, carrying her in his arms. The door creaked open under his shoulders' weight. Inside was dark and cold, but dry. He laid her on a cot, struck flint to fire, and soon the flames crackled to life, throwing golden light across rough log walls. He rubbed her hands, trying to bring warmth back into them. "Come on, miss, don't quit on me now," he whispered. After a few long moments, she coughed, shivering hard. "Where am I?" she asked weakly. "Safe," John replied, tossing another log on the fire. "You'll live!" She stared at him for a long moment, eyes full of wary confusion. "You shouldn't have touched me," she said suddenly, voice soft but steady. John froze, hand halfway to his canteen. "Ma'am, I just saved your life." She looked down as if ashamed. "In my tribe, if a man touches a woman's body to give her life, if he shares warmth, he becomes her mate." Her words hung heavy in the smoke-filled air. John blinked, thinking she was feverish. "You've hit your head," he said gently. "You need rest," but her expression didn't change. Outside, the storm howled louder, as if echoing something ancient and unseen. The night deepened. Snow thudded against the roof, and the fire danced lower. John sat near the hearth, hat in his lap, staring into the flames. He'd met many tribes during his travels, Navajo, Apache, Pima, but he'd never heard of such a custom. "What's your name?" he asked after a while. She hesitated, then whispered, "Ayanna, daughter of White Hawk." Her eyes, dark as midnight, met his. "You are now part of me?" John shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Ayanna, I was just trying to help. I don't belong to nobody." She only smiled faintly, closing her eyes. The fire crackled, shadows moving across her face. John watched her breathe steadily now, her color slowly returning. Outside, coyotes howled, a chorus of ghosts in the cold. He pulled his coat tighter and whispered, "Lord, what have I done?" He thought of the ranch back home, of the long nights spent alone, and how strange it felt to have another soul breathing beside him. Her hand twitched once, brushing his sleeve. He didn't move. Somehow the small touch felt like a spark in the frozen night, something he couldn't explain but couldn't deny. Hours passed. The storm raged, but inside, the world softened. He brewed coffee, its bitter scent filling the cabin. Ayanna stirred awake again, blinking at him. "You stayed," she murmured. John nodded. "Couldn't leave you to freeze." She studied his face for a long time, the rugged lines, the scar near his jaw, the tired kindness in his eyes. "My people would not understand," she said quietly. "They would say I have bound myself to a stranger." John shrugged. "Then we'll just keep that between us," he said. But her eyes said she already knew better. As the night dragged on, she told him fragments of her story. Her tribe had been moving north when soldiers raided their camp. She'd fled into the mountains alone, hunted by cold and grief. "I thought the spirits had taken me," she said softly, staring into the fire. "Then you came." John didn't know what to say. He poured her water instead, his rough hands trembling slightly. He'd fought Indians before, once, long ago, but hearing her voice made it impossible to see her as an enemy. She was just a woman fighting to stay alive. Toward midnight, the fire dimmed to embers. Ayanna shivered again, teeth chattering. John hesitated, then lifted the blanket from his own shoulders and tucked it around her. "You need this more than I do." She looked at him, eyes glistening. When you give your fire, she whispered, you give your spirit. John sighed, leaning against the wall. I reckon I'll keep my spirit anyway, he muttered. But deep down her words lingered. There was something sacred in the way she spoke, as if every act of kindness carried eternal weight under her people's sky. Morning came slow, grey, and silent. The storm had stopped, leaving the world buried in snow. John pushed the door open, squinting against the light. The air smelled clean, sharp, and still. Behind him, Ayana stirred, wrapping the blanket tighter. It is a new world, she said softly. The old one died in the night. He smiled faintly. Feels like it. For a long time, neither spoke. He handed her a piece of bread and dried meat, which she accepted with quiet grace. Despite their differences, something fragile, almost tender, had formed between them. After breakfast, John saddled his horse. You can ride with me, he offered. Nearest settlement's 30 miles west. Ayana shook her head. I cannot go with you. My people will look for me. But you... She hesitated. You are part of their story now. John frowned. You're saying I'm stuck with this mate thing. She didn't smile this time. It is not a thing. It is sacred. He rubbed the back of his neck, unsure whether to laugh or be afraid. Lady, I'm just a cowboy, he said. I don't reckon spirits care much about me. Ayana stepped closer, her breath warm in the cold air. They already have, she said. For a moment John saw something in her gaze, not superstition, but truth. Something old as the wind that carried the snow. She turned away, wrapping his coat tighter around herself. When the sun returns, she whispered, you will know. John watched her, heart pounding. Outside, the white plains shimmered under the first light of dawn. He didn't understand her words, but he felt them deep in his chest, the quiet weight of destiny beginning to unfold. John rode beside Ayana as far as the edge of the valley. The world was silent, buried in white. Smoke rose from distant pines, her people's camp. His gut twisted. He'd faced gunfire, blizzards, and betrayal, but nothing scared him more than walking into another man's tribe, especially with their daughter at his side. Ayana's face was calm, but her fingers trembled where they clutched them. Blanket. If they see you, they will judge, she said. But I will speak for you. John nodded, though unease crawled in his chest like a rattlesnake waiting to strike. As they approached, shadows moved among the trees, Apache warriors, bows drawn, faces painted in ash and ochre. John raised his hand slowly. He could feel their eyes on him, cold and sharp as flint. One warrior shouted and another stepped forward, tall, broad, with the same eyes as Ayana. Her brother. He saved me, Ayana said quickly in her native tongue. The men murmured among themselves. Her brother glared at John, then back at her. He touched you? He demanded. Ayana hesitated, then nodded once. The silence that followed was heavy, like thunder before a storm. Her brother's voice dropped low. Then he is bound, John frowned. Bound to what? But before he could get an answer, the warriors surrounded him, spears raised. Ayana stepped between them. No, he is mine now, by the spirit's decree. The men stopped, uncertain. Her brother studied her with both anger and confusion. You would claim a white drifter? She met his stare. He shared breath, fire, and warmth. He saved what the river tried to take. He is no stranger. He is chosen. The men muttered, but none dared challenge the sacred law. John stood silent, the wind cutting through him. Ayana, he said softly, I didn't mean for this to happen. She turned toward him, eyes bright. Meaning does not matter. The spirits see truth, not intention. The warriors took his horse and led them both into the camp. John's stomach tightened as the smell of smoke and sage filled the air. Dozens of eyes turned toward him, women whispering, children staring. They looked at him like he was something between a ghost and a curse. He'd never felt more out of place in his life. Inside the chief's lodge, the air was thick with incense. Ayana knelt before an older man whose face bore the weight of mountains, her father, White Hawk. He listened quietly as she told the story of the river, the storm, and the fire. When she finished, he looked at John. You gave her life, he said in rough English. So now you share that life. John swallowed hard. Sir, I only did what any man would have done. The old chief shook his head. No, you did what few men would dare, and the spirits have claimed it. The ceremony began that same night. The tribe gathered around a great fire, chanting low and rhythmic. John stood in the center beside Ayana, his heart pounding like a war drum. They painted symbols on his hands, one for life, one for unity, and placed a feather in his hat. You walk the path between worlds now, Whitehawk said. Your spirit walks with hers. John's breath caught. Ayana reached for his hand, fingers warm despite the cold. Do not fear, she whispered. This is not punishment. It is the beginning of something meant. After the chants faded, the tribe feasted, venison, corn, and warm bread. John sat beside Ayana, uneasy but strangely moved. Her people laughed and danced under the starlight. When she smiled at him, he felt a peace he hadn't known in years. Still, part of him wondered what would happen when morning came. Would they expect him to stay? To leave his world behind? When the fire burned low, Ayana leaned close. In your world you save with hands, she said softly. In mine you save with spirit. That is what you did, and cannot undo. The next day, John helped mend a broken fence near the horses. The men watched him silently at first, but gradually their suspicion eased. Ayana's brother Koa joined him. You work like one of us, he said grudgingly. John grinned. It works the same everywhere, in dirt, sweat, and rope. Koa chuckled once, then handed him a water pouch. My sister sees something in you, he said. You should not make her regret it. John nodded solemnly. I won't. For the first time, Koa's eyes softened. Then maybe the spirits chose well. As days passed, John learned their ways, how to track by moonlight, how to listen to the silence between winds. He taught them to shoe horses faster, to mend saddles with wire. Ayana was always near, quiet but steady. Their bond deepened, unspoken yet undeniable. One night by the river, she said, You belong nowhere, that is why the spirits gave you to me. John smiled faintly. And you? She looked up at the stars. I belonged to the wind. Now I belong to something still. Her hand brushed his. To you. One dawn, soldiers approached the valley, blue coats, rifles gleaming. John saw them first. They're coming, he warned. Panic rippled through the camp. He knew these men, bounty chasers sent to capture or kill any tribe resisting relocation. John loaded his revolver, standing beside Ayana's father. They won't take this land easy, he said. The chief nodded. The first gunshot split the morning. Smoke filled the air. John fought like a man possessed. Not for himself, but for the people who'd accepted him. Beside him, Ayana fired arrows, fearless as the rising sun. When the last echo of gunfire faded, silence fell heavy. Smoke curled above the snow. The soldiers retreated, leaving the camp bruised but standing. John's arm was bleeding, but he barely noticed. Ayana rushed to him, pressing her hands over the wound. You fought for us, she whispered. Guess that makes me one of you, he said with a weak smile. Her eyes filled with tears. You always were. She leaned close, resting her forehead against his. The world was still, just breath, warmth, and the sound of their hearts beating as one. Weeks later, spring arrived. The snow melted and the land bloomed green once more. John stood on the ridge watching the sunrise. Ayana joined him, wrapping her arms around his waist. You could leave, she said softly. The world beyond waits. John turned to her, eyes tender. Maybe once I thought I needed the open trail, he said. But now I reckon I've found where I'm meant to be. She smiled, pressing her hand to his chest. Then the spirits were right. He kissed her forehead as dawn painted the valley gold. A cowboy bound by love and fate.